We go on. Yeshua said in Matthew 5, verses 17 through 20, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, the Torah or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot, will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Now that is a difficult word, but you have to understand something. He's not talking to the Gentiles here. Nobody has gone to the Gentiles yet. We don't see it until Matthew 28. So at this stage, he's still talking to the people of Israel. He's telling all the people of Israel who would hear his voice that they needed to observe the Torah and the Nevi'im, the prophets. And then in Matthew 7:6, he says, "Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you." This doesn't say anything about doing anything with dogs or pigs. It doesn't have anything to do with physical little white pearls. It doesn't have anything to do with being trampled underfoot by a hog. This is figurative. It's metaphorical. It's abstract. It's talking about how you talk about the good news of the Almighty. He goes on in Matthew 7, verses 13 and 14, he says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." Well, this isn't talking about a physical gate somewhere that's narrow and another physical gate somewhere that's wide and broad. It's talking about your commitment to walk the walk led by the Almighty into the kingdom of God. In Matthew 7, verses 15 through 20, he warns, "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves." Again, he uses these figures of speech to describe things all the time throughout Matthew. He says, "You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit. But the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. So you will recognize them by their fruits." In Matthew 7, verses 21 through 23, he warns everybody out there who's listening to him. He says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" Think about that. Prophesying in the name of the Lord, casting out demons in the name of the Lord, doing mighty works in his name, and yet he says, "I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness." Folks, this requires more than just mental thinking about this. This requires revelation by the Spirit of the Almighty. Yeshua went on, Matthew 8, verse 22. "Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead." So again, we're talking about something beyond physical death. How can a dead person bury another of their own dead? He's not talking about physical dead here. When we get to Matthew 8, verses 23 through 27, and I want to mention this, it's not strictly a parabolic passage, but I just want to emphasize something here that is interesting and relates to our study of baptism and baptisma in the Greek New Testament. He says, "When Yeshua got into the boat, his disciples followed him, and behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves." Well, it's interesting that the New Testament uses baptize and baptism in a concentration that is beyond any of the writings that were written in those days that were near to the New Testament. For example, Philo of Alexandria, or Josephus, or Plutarch even, or Justin Martyr. The New Testament uses baptize all over the place. And Josephus used baptize to talk about ships that were being sunk or that had sunk. So, since the writers of the New Testament used baptize so often, it seems important to note that here, even though baptize was used for boats that were being sunk, here they used a different word. They didn't use baptize, which is unusual because they use baptize many times more in a much greater percentage than other writers did in those days. Yeshua tells them, "Why are you afraid, O you of little faith? He arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was great calm. What sort of man is this?" Later, in Matthew 8, verses 31 through 32, the demons begged him, saying, "If you cast us out, cast us into the herd of pigs." He said to them, "Go." So they came out and went into the pigs. Behold, the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the waters. Now again, Josephus talks about people being baptized in which they were drowned to death. So since the New Testament writers used baptize and baptism so often, it's very interesting that they didn't use it here. He could have written, "They rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were baptized in the waters." All readers of that particular verse in those days would have understood that he's talking about being drowned, even if many of you today don't. Another parabolic or metaphorical use, Yeshua said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." He said that when he was eating with those who are considered sinners. In Matthew 9, verses 15 through 17, Yeshua said, "Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away, and then they will fast." So this is a statement that describes Yeshua as being the bridegroom, and he has wedding guests who are his disciples, and that people don't fast when wedding guests are with the bridegroom. So it is with his disciples that they don't fast while the bridegroom is there. But he does say that when the bridegroom is taken away, as in his death, burial, resurrection, and ascension into heaven, after that, then they will fast, which is what we're still in those days. We ought to be fasting here and there. In Matthew 9, verse 24, he says, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, because they knew she was dead. Matthew 9, verse 36, says, "When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd." So that's how Yeshua saw them, and that's how Matthew described Yeshua, that he saw them like sheep without a shepherd. Matthew 9, verses 37 through 38, Yeshua said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." So again, we're not talking about going out into the field to harvest wheat. We're talking about going out among the people and bringing to them knowledge of the kingdom of God, transforming them. Matthew 10, verse 6, "Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Lost sheep. Again, parabolic language. Matthew 10, verse 16, "Behold, I'm sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a teacher above his master. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher, and the servant like his master. If they've called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they malign those of his household? Yeshua talks to the crowds about Yochanan ben Zechariah, John the Baptist. As they went away, Yeshua began to speak to the crowds. "What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind?" Again, he uses parabolic metaphorical language. Matthew 11:10, "This is he of whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you. This is describing Yohanan. Again, in a couple more verses, it says, for all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And if you're willing to accept it, he is Eliyahu, Elijah, who is to come. This verse is important as well, for the prophets and the law prophesied, spoke about the future until John. When John came, the prophets and the law began to be fulfilled, if you can receive it.